Okay, welcome to the final go-to session for the month. This is mostly just a wrap-up and goodbye, a tearful goodbye for all the people who have been working hard this month. This has actually been a pretty good go-to group this month. I've pretty much seen the same core faces of 4 to 5 people showing up every session, which may not seem like a lot, but we typically begin the month with around 25 students. And some students don't keep up with the work. Some students, just because of time commitments, decide otherwise, and figure it's better to attend Full Sail later on when they're ready. So we typically drop down to, I think we have 18 students left with us right now. So, considering that 7 p.m. Eastern twice a week may not fit everybody's schedules. Some people are working, some people have families, for some people it's dinner time. Some people just prefer to watch the videos when they can rather than live. We've actually had pretty decent turnout. I think last month I had one person show up for this final session, which made the session kind of awkward. So it's good to see that we have a handful of people here. Okay, so here's briefly what I want to go over. I want to introduce the concept of the Digital Citizenship Compass because it's a part of your final assignment. So we'll talk about that. Then I will get into the assignment, what you will need to do. It's a pretty straightforward assignment. I think I've mentioned this in past sessions, but this is the first assignment where finally, thank God, you don't have to worry about screenshots or DGO or finding articles or doing this or doing that. It's much more straightforward. But I do have some things that I want to stress so that people do as well on the assignment as possible. And then I'll just quickly get some feedback from you. You might even want to start thinking about it now, like what were some of the favorite things you learned this month, either in terms of new tools or technologies that you encountered that you hadn't previously, or any ideas, concepts, or specific activities that we did during the month. So that's kind of part of the reflection part of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. So here's a picture of the digital compass. Okay, and I'm going to show the assignment sheet in just a second. But as you can see, it's much like a compass in that typically we'd have north, south, east, west. But this compass, it's tailored towards digital citizenship ideas. You could also almost call it like a moral compass because it's gauging not where you're standing direction-wise, but it's actually asking you to think about where you stand on a certain position. So if you look at the compass, you can see north and south has been replaced with right and wrong. The other polarities, instead of east to west, we have it doesn't bother me, or maybe it bothers me, maybe not. And then we have lots of gray areas in between. And we'll look at a specific example in just a second that we'll work through together. But I'm going to switch gears and actually go to the assignment sheet real quickly. Okay, so here's the assignment sheet. You already have this as part of your downloadable asset, so you can look through it carefully all on your own. But basically this is split into 3 parts, and most students are just going to create like a Microsoft Word document because it's pretty straightforward, in which you'll just be sort of answering, looking at questions and providing answers to those questions. The first page mostly goes over objectives, reminding you of what you're doing here. By the way, this is called the Bringing It All Together assignment, so this final assignment is asking you to do just that. It's asking you to look back on all the things that we've discussed this month and really show that you kind of have a pretty solid understanding of the things that we've covered. I know we've covered a lot in 4 weeks, but hopefully some of it has stuck. So you can read through the objectives, for example, being familiar with digital literacy terms and concepts, to be able to talk about digital literacy tools, to discuss ethics, right, as it relates to being a responsible global citizen, etc. Yeah, I always love these suggested hours that it takes to complete things. 9 hours. That's might be an inflated total, but that's considering everything, assuming that you've attended the 3 hours worth of go-to sessions for the week. That you spent some time maybe looking back over past materials to help you come up with answers to this assignment, and maybe spending the 2 hours or so actually completing the assignment. And all the stuff that you're familiar with by now, like you should be labeling your file a certain way. But here are the big parts. It's really split into 3 parts, and You probably should, when you hand in your Microsoft Word document, just set it up this way. Um, but at this stage, you should probably know what to do. So I'm going to go ahead and real quickly give a demonstration. When you get into English in month 4, we have very, very specific formatting rules in terms of how you lay out a document before you hand it in. But for these assignments, we don't really worry about that much. So as usual, you'll have your name somewhere. You'll have your student number, right? And then you would probably just need to create separate parts for the assignment, right? Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. I could probably blow that up and make that bigger. Okay, so I mean, the setup is really kind of simple. You don't have to worry about presentation tools for this. You don't have to worry about it using any fancy things. I mean, if you want to, you can go ahead and give it a try. Every so often, there's a student who just falls in love with Prezi for some reason. But really, for this assignment, I think that's a lot of extra work that's not really necessary. Joshua, no, it's not an outline. It kind of starts looking like an outline, but it's basically you'll be answering a lot of questions within these individual parts. And just so that I can make sense out of it, it kind of makes sense to label it Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. So, for example, Part 1 covers the 9 themes of digital citizenship. And this is almost like a matching activity. You have the 9 terms here that are related to digital citizenship. Remember, we had that reading about the 9 elements of digital citizenship. So here they are. And you just have to match them with the statements here below. So we're going to go through one together, okay? So here's one answer you'll get right. For example, let's look at number 8, which says, adding items to your wish list on Amazon that you share with your family and friends. So if we go back up to the list of the 9 elements of digital citizenship, which one fits that? I'm purposely starting with the easiest, because if I'm going to give away an answer, I might as well give away one of the ones that pretty much everybody gets right. Yeah, so Josh answered it, digital commerce. Please, for this section and all the sections, I don't think I can copy and paste from this PDF. No, I can't. But please reproduce the actual question in your answers. And if you find the same problem that you're having trouble copying and pasting from PDF, they're simple online tools. Like if you just Google PDF to Word converter, you can always just convert a PDF file to a Microsoft Word document, which will then allow you to go in and copy and paste things, so you're not going, back and forth between 2 different screens, or your Microsoft Word document and this document trying to type the individual words. That could be a pain. Are most people comfortable with doing things like that? Do you know how to go online and find a simple conversion tool? Right, so if I just go to Google and say PDF to DOC, that's the file type for Microsoft Word converter. Like the very first thing that pops up is one that I use all the time. Okay, so you just upload a file and it will convert it to Microsoft Word for you, and then you can open it and copy and paste from it. I don't know how it looks on PC, but on Mac, if I hover my cursor down near the bottom of the PDF document, this little thing comes up that allows me to save the PDF file to my desktop, and then I can just upload it and convert it. Maybe someone else has another trick. Does anybody know? Is there another trick to getting a PDF file like this that appears when you just click on it to allow the text within it to copy and paste over? Because I do get it. It really is frustrating when students hand in the assignment and just the answers appear. Because from my end, I then have to go back to the original document and go back and forth to try to remember what you're answering. I don't have all these questions memorized in my head. I know what they are. I've seen them enough, but I don't remember the specific order or something. Joshua, I don't understand your question. Why not this format? Okay, so anyway, step 1 is as simple as that. So you'll put the question on your Microsoft Word doc, and let's pretend that I figured out a way to copy it over. Adding items to your Amazon wish list, and then I provide my answer. You should do a little bit more though. Be sure to read through the instructions thoroughly. You're not just choosing the right answer, but you're also explaining why you chose that item. So, for your submission, list a statement. So it's telling you, produce the statement, followed by your choice and explanation. Now, for some of them, I don't expect you to have to go much into depth. Like the Amazon.com question is pretty self-explanatory, so you can just explain it really just in a brief sentence or something. But there should be explanations attached to your choice. And this is important because some of these, I admit, it gets a little bit confusing. Typically, the issues dealing with digital communication, which are the ones that people mix up all the time. It's usually like digital communication, digital rights, sometimes digital access. Students will sometimes muddle them a bit, but if their statement explaining why they chose it is pretty strong, that can sometimes sway me, so it's pretty important to have a statement there. And by the way, this is like open book. This isn't a quiz that you're taking without being able to look at previous materials. So go back to that 9 elements of digital citizenship reading, right? Which is it's a downloadable asset, but it's also just available if you just Google 9 elements of digital citizenship. See, it starts popping up as soon as I type in the words, and you can go right to the reading, so you don't even need to download it again. So you have these descriptions here, which will help you pretty much spot the right answer. So you don't have to try to guess and figure out things that maybe you forgot from a couple weeks ago. So there's part 1. Part 2 deals with the moral compass. Okay, and pretty much it's sort of the same thing. Here you have, I think, 7 statements. Yeah, 7. And again, you'll have to reproduce these statements on your Microsoft Word document, or if you're using Google Docs or another online tool, if in case you don't have Microsoft Word installed on your computer, that's fine. But you're going to copy and paste or reproduce the statement, and then you're going to, based on the scenario that's given, you're going to explain where you fall on the moral, or the digital citizenship compass, and explain your answer. So let me go back briefly to the PowerPoint thingy. This is not one of the questions on your assignment, so we're not going to work through one that you're going to literally answer. But I kind of like that, so we're not giving too many answers away during this session. But look at this statement, which actually comes from a previous version of this assignment. We kind of switch up the assignments and the specifics of them month to month. So look at this scenario. You work for a club. The owner approaches you about your knowledge of Photoshop and wants you to edit some pictures of the club that are on the club's website. He wants you to add in equipment that the club does not have. Also, famous artists who have not played there. And people into the crowd shots to make the club look more crowded. So if you're in this situation where the club owner basically wants you to add elements to the company's website photo that may not be 100% accurate, where would you be on this digital citizenship compass? Is it right? Wrong? Is it worth it if you don't get in trouble? Are you not comfortable with it? Does it not bother you? Meaning you don't necessarily think it's right or wrong, but hey, who cares? Or are you sort of hedging? Maybe, maybe not. Chanda says not comfortable with this. Joshua says the same thing. Okay, why? I mean, maybe it seems obvious, but why? Because in a few seconds I'll try to make not a defense of it, but maybe a suggestion for why it could be in these gray areas. But what would make you uncomfortable as an employee to be asked to do that? Joshua says because it's lying. There's also the likeness of the person that has not been allowed on the site. Okay, the second part of that's probably the biggest stumbling block for me, especially in terms of performers, because I mean, I'm assuming from this statement, let's say it's a small club that's not necessarily famous, but if we're talking about these big clubs in Vegas or something, or maybe a club that's opening that wants to compete with that level, and you want to try to pretend like Danger Mouse has showed up to your club to to lead the sort of DJ session, you'll get in trouble if you do that without permission. Okay, other people have said not to mention false advertising with the lack of equipment. Okay, so yeah, there's 2 people said they're not comfortable with this. Anybody want to make a sort of argument that it could be right with a few changes, or maybe it's worth a shot, or maybe not? How about some people in the session who are being kind of quiet? Could we ever think of an instance where it might be okay to do that? Well, I'll give a possible scenario. Let's say that the club does have its good nights where it's pretty crowded, but for whatever reason, the only shots you could capture were on a day where maybe the place isn't busy. Or maybe it goes back and forth. Like some days it's busy, okay, some days it's not, but why would you ever take a picture of the place when it's dead empty? Right? I mean, there's lying, there's flat out lying if the place is truly just dead every single night and trying to sell it as not. That seems to me a little bit sketchy. But if it has certain nights where it's busier than others, I mean, are you really going to take a picture of the club when it's empty and put that up on your website? So I think that's sort of a gray area. Um, think of the way that advertising works with like food on television. That cheeseburger you see in the ad never looks like the cheeseburger you actually purchase. Um, right? I mean, is that misleading? Maybe, but as adults, we kind of understand that this is part of advertising. So I do think that maybe with some tweaks, it could possibly be okay. Um, Same thing with equipment. I mean, maybe as Chanda says, the equipment will honestly be coming along eventually. Excuse me. And maybe it's not a complete lie that to suggest it, or maybe you have equipment that's pretty darn close, even though it's not exactly what's pictured in the photo. Maybe you have terrific equipment, but it's beat up, so you just you found some sort of glitzy photos of the same sort of product and added it to the picture. Maybe it's a little bit deceptive, but it seems like that falls under sort of positive advertising. Yeah, the one part that makes me the most nervous is featuring photos of famous artists who have not played there. That seems to be crossing a line. And as we talked about the other day about copyright, I mean, when we're talking about personalities, that's not technically copyright, but it does fall under a weird legal category that I'm not even sure how to describe. But you're not allowed to just use people's likenesses, especially for advertising reasons, which are connected to profit making, without that person's permission. So I don't know. Probably I wouldn't disagree with Chanda and Joshua. I might say not comfortable with this instead of absolutely wrong. Or I might go as far as saying maybe not, because depending on the situation. But the important thing here is with the scenarios that you need to look at, and I'm going to go back to that real quickly. Um, there are no right or wrong answers here. You just have to provide an answer to these scenarios that seems kind of well reasoned and well argued. So, for example, here's one. Somebody wants to watch a movie. He can't find it on Netflix, Hulu, or any other paid streaming service. He's on a budget, so he decides to search for it online and download it illegally. So you'll have to decide, where does that fall? Right, wrong? Um, and then here's an important thing that I want to stress is that for all parts of this assignment, you should be trying to connect your answers as strongly as possible to the stuff that we've learned in class. So I'm looking for more than just your personal opinion and your statements, because those are difficult to grade because I can't really grade. Well, part one I can grade based on right or wrong, but the other two parts, it's really sort of in between. So what I'm looking at is the quality of the response and how much the response is connecting to some of the topics that we learned in class. It doesn't mean that you just drop in terms out of the blue without connecting them. Like, don't just mention digital etiquette, but then not explain how digital etiquette applies. But yeah, the way to do well in this assignment is to come up with well-reasoned, somewhat in-depth responses, but also ones that connect ideas back to course material. So we're not going to go over number one about downloading illegally, but you'll have to think that through. And by the way, I don't grade based on like my opinion of where you should be on that digital moral compass, right? We know that lots of people have downloaded things in their past. Although we do have one student in our class, he for his digital literacy vision update, he describes himself as kind of the online policeman, which I thought was really funny. But like he's super intense about watching for these sorts of things and reporting it. So be careful. They're out there. But okay, Chanda says she's guilty. Joshua says illegal downloading is fun. So if you're going to take a position on the digital compass that it's not completely wrong, you'll have to justify that answer somehow, right? And connect it to digital citizenship things. Or you might just want to confess that, hey, I'm okay with this, but I know that on some level it's probably not right because of blah 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 what we learned in this class. So you'll have to connect it somehow. Okay, so yeah, part two. Make sure to copy and paste these statements over and produce solid statements. Part three is really similar. Okay, it basically presents scenarios which it asks, as a digital citizen, what would you do? So, what's a good one in this one? Oh, they're all good. The online dating one. Yeah, that's a good one. A friend of yours has created an online dating profile and claims to have found the love of his life. They've been dating online for almost a year, but have never met in person, which raises the question, have they really been dating? You are concerned that that person your friend met online might be a catfish or someone who has created a fake online profile. By the way, before teaching this class, I had never heard the word catfish to refer to someone who creates a fake profile. Is that a term you all know about, but something that I just missed in my old age, that I'm not up to date on your terms? Chanda, you've heard of that? That's obvious. Yeah. Well, I forget. There was some term I read about the other day that I'll never remember it. But it's another one where I was like, really? People are using this term? I've never heard of it. Um, okay, so there's this person. You're suspicious that the person your friend has met is someone who has created a fake profile. How could you prove this possibility to your friend? Okay. So again, your job here isn't just to give your personal opinion. I mean, you do that obviously, but also try to connect it to the concepts we learned in class. Okay, so for this one, it gets into issues of well, I can't give you the answers, but it covers a lot of the stuff that we've discussed in class. Okay, so this is your job to sort of show off and show me what you know. Okay, so that's really kind of my biggest tip here. I think the biggest two issues that I see here is, are people not copying and pasting the original statements over into the Microsoft Word document. That's just an annoyance. I have to be honest, because it's on the instruction sheet and I mention the go-to sessions, and then I make the angry grrr sound. Right, I'll type that in the chat. When I have to go flipping back and forth between your answers and the questions that are on the assignment sheet. That's one big thing. And the other big thing is that, yeah, there are statements provided, but they're not really that thoughtful. They're not really that in-depth. And they're not making that strong of an attempt to connect to the concepts we learned in class. So I recommend, go back to your activity page. Just remind yourself of the stuff that we've covered all month. So week one, we talked about digital natives versus digital immigrants, digital identity, right? These sort of basic concepts. In week two, we got more into how do we verify whether stuff is true or not that we find online. We eventually got more specifically into looking at specific resources in the form of articles, but also the larger focus is just on how do we verify things that we see online. And week three got into the kind of hardcore concepts of digital citizenship, what it's made of, what it means to be a responsible digital citizen, the DGL cold case where you had to imagine yourself in a certain scenario, so you're kind of revisiting that in the final assignment. And lastly, this week we got into issues of really more of the moral issues. So copyright kind of touches on that, because should you be violating people's copyrights if you can get away with it, or should you not? You had a couple TED Talks about the moral operating system, bringing ethics into what we do. Okay, so if you need a refresher, just go back and look through some of the activities, look through some of the discussions, because all these questions on the sheet, they're not just made up out of our head that we just throw on there as a way to say, oh, these look like fun, let's see what the students say. They're actually carefully tied in to specific weeks and specific assignments and specific concepts that you've learned throughout the course. So we're looking for you to connect your answers to some of those concepts. Okay, but I don't know. Does this final assignment seem pretty clear to everyone? Like I said, it really is straightforward. You're copying and pasting questions and then providing answers to things. Okay? Yeah, so it's pretty basic. I love this final assignment. They're fun to read through. I like reading people's responses. I like to see how well they're connecting their ideas back to class concepts. But also, I like it because it's I won't say it's easier to grade, but obviously I have fewer things to look for because I don't have to go through my checklist of did they include screenshots, did they include their DGL list, did they include at least so many articles, etc. This is pretty straightforward, and hopefully it's a little bit easier. Maybe not easier because in some ways I imagine this assignment taking a longer amount of time than some of the others. But it is fun to read through. Oh, one final warning I forgot to mention. You're answering all of these, okay? So there are 7 situations for the Digital Citizenship Compass. There are, I think, also 6 for part 3. Okay, so you're answering all of them. Because every month I get that one student who picks one statement from each of the 3 parts. And then I have to be the mean instructor who says, no, this wasn't the assignment to pick 3 things and spend 5 minutes answering them. You have to go through them all. Yeah, that's not a challenge you want to take, Joshua. And I'm not trying to make fun of people. I know that there are so many instructions that people could be confused. But no, you're answering basically everything on this assignment sheet. Okay, let me go back. So, have we reflected? Like, let's begin with some of these things. Like, favorite tool. We have other people in the room. I'm not sure why they're being so quiet in the chat. But was there a favorite tool that you learned this term? And you don't have to say DGO if you honestly hated DGO. But, you were introduced to DGO. You were encouraged to use tools that maybe we didn't present officially in certain sessions, like Google Docs or whatever. But then there were other things that you maybe played with for the digital literacy vision thing. Joshua says Google Drive. Yeah, Google Drive's cool because in the old days, because I'm old enough to remember, like, it was such a bummer not to have these tools included on your computer. And because Microsoft Office was super expensive, yeah, I can remember, I shouldn't admit this as an instructor, but I remember downloading versions of Microsoft Office because I didn't have the $300 to pay for that software tool. Now all these companies are going to a different philosophy, which is make these tools free, right? Or at least make them online free, so that people can create things. Because, again, this connects to what I said in a previous go-to session, where if we're going to live in a world where people have access to online methods to communicate, well, then they need the tools to be able to fully participate. And so, yeah, you have Microsoft with OneDrive, you have the Google suite of tools. Apple now has their iCloud service, so you can use their products like Pages or Keynote online, instead of having to have this really expensive software purchased and installed on your system. So I think that's pretty awesome. Someone else mentioned DGO. Dwayne, I hope you were being honest. Some people love DGO, some people don't. I think I'm kind of torn. I think I mentioned this the first week. I'm sort of torn. It is awesome. I like the fact that you can bookmark things in a way that typical bookmarks don't, because you can highlight things, which is really useful if you need to find a piece of information within something that you read, instead of just having to remember, oh, I need to go find that thing that was interesting. I think it's a little bit awkward once you get into the DGO library itself. Or maybe it's just me. I always find it a little bit clunky in terms of creating lists and adding things to the list and moving things around. And sometimes other students agree, sometimes students don't. But if you like it, keep using it. How about a favorite idea or concept? I kind of just riffed through most of them, what we kind of concentrate on week to week. Was there a particular topic, just in general, that seemed interesting? Whether it was issues of copyright, or whether it was issues of digital immigrants versus digital natives, or how to separate fact and fiction online. Joshua says copyright. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite go-to sessions to deliver, because I often find that students have a general sense of what copyright is, but not a very specific sense of what it means. And also the fact that copyright is complicated now in 2014, because we have this sort of middle area where people are producing items that are meant to be shared, but you still should be giving credit to them. So that's kind of cool. Chanda says digital immigrants. Yeah, I love that article. I know it's old, and I know sometimes students freak out because already in week one they have to read this article that's kind of a bit long, and it might seem sort of academic sounding, but I really think it's filled with great information. And there's a reason why that article is so famous, because it really is. You want to talk about like famous books or movies or songs. This is almost like a famous academic article, and I think the reason why is because even though it was published in, I think, I forget, 2001 maybe, that a lot of the ideas still hold up. And at a place like Full Sail, it's a really interesting concept to get into, because most students find themselves nodding their heads at the idea, not nodding their heads to fall asleep, but nodding their heads in agreement with the concepts explained, because usually there's a huge difference between the world of education they had before coming to Full Sail and then what they encountered here at this university, where we really try our hardest to kind of meet students on a more innovative ground. Any favorite activities? I mean, I know that maybe you're not jumping up and down when assignments are due, or even specific discussions. I like the TED Talk videos. I really do. I think a lot of them are fun to watch. I know I'm not supposed to answer, but I think a lot of those are useful. There's some cool ones, like the one about YouTube and copyright, the one about GPS, even the one about how you can verify data, right? How you can use like online tools to figure out. Wow, Chanda, that's cool. Yeah, there are a ton of them. I mean, we feature some of them as part of this class, but it's like an ongoing series where you get to see innovative people present kind of talks on really interesting topics. So, anything else we should add to the reflection about what we thought was cool? Of course, there's a student course evaluation. Don't forget to fill that out. That's the final item on class. That's your place to talk about things you didn't think were cool. That's your actually, that's your place to talk about what you enjoyed, or if you did have any concerns about the course or the instructor or the assignments or the grading. That's your place to sort of express your feedback, which I don't see until after the fact, and it's never connected with your name, so you don't have to worry about that factor. I won't be sitting there grading these final assignments thinking, oh, so and so said something so mean, F. Right? Yeah, like Chanda, if you said that, I would have no way to know. I'll just eventually I'll know, because I'll get a bunch of comments with no names attached to them. Okay, any final questions before we have the tearful goodbye? We all grab for the Kleenex. Questions about anything? Okay, so you basically have two things still to finish if you haven't already. So let's bring it all together assignment. And also, I looked from the board because I was already posting today, but for the what do you call it? The revision of your digital identity vision. Most of you have posted the board, I think, but if you haven't, you still have until Sunday to complete that assignment and respond to at least 2 other classmates thoughtfully. Both of those end Sunday night, okay? So get those things done. Monday is Labor Day. Tuesday, from what I understand, the university is also semi-closed, or at least for online students, and classes officially begin on Wednesday. But it's important that you get things handed in by Sunday night. But are there any other questions that people have in terms of anything related to the class, or what you need to do, or, I don't know, bureaucratic things before we call it a day? Yeah, Joshua, if you're ever in Orlando, We can meet for coffee. I actually had another student who from like 6 months ago contacted me and wants to get together. So there are actually some students who who don't hate being in my class, even when they see their grades sometimes. By the way, I'm one of the more generous. I'm not trying to like get like I'm not fishing for like positive feedback or something, but I'm one of the more generous instructors here. I try my best to make sure that students pass. There's only so much I can do. I can't bend rules. I can't give people A's when I don't think a project was worth an A, but I do try to get people through, especially this first month. You're new to GGL and Full Sail, so that's pretty important. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Okay, and the people in this room have pretty much been showing up every week, so that's been cool. I've been hearing a lot from you guys online. People were asking lots of questions. Hopefully, I was getting back to people in a timely fashion. Hopefully, my feedback was useful. Um, so, if people don't have questions, uh, you're free to go. Just get in touch with me if you do have any questions. Okay. And thanks for making this an awesome month. And feel free to contact me. And again, I'm not going to say goodbye, because you know what? I'll probably see some of you again. Just the odds of it. I'll see some of you again in month 4 in English class. And that's when I get mean. that's when I bear down. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop this recording now.